On a bright, sunny day in our city, nestled within the land of H country, life moved as it always had. The world offered countless professions, yet few had the privilege of choosing freely. Even those who entered their chosen fields through sheer determination often found that the success others envied remained an elusive dream, something only imagined over a few drinks. Some reached the peak of their aspirations, while others never made it, their destinies largely shaped by their backgrounds. Inside a bustling shop, a warm greeting was extended to our protagonist, Chung. His eyes were drawn to the gleaming armor displayed before him, admiration evident in his gaze. Each time he passed by, he felt the same pull, a longing to step inside, to study the craftsmanship, and to imagine the day he could finally wear such gear. Though not yet an adventurer, Chung believed that with perseverance, he would eventually achieve his goal. With keen interest, he took notes, observing that the latest armor had enhanced resistance to magic and an improved aesthetic. However, as he analyzed its features, he realized the defensive upgrade seemed minimal, with only a 15% increase in protection compared to previous models. Just then, the agent at the shop welcomed a new customer. Two men entered. One appeared to be a bodyguard, standing attentively beside the other, a man of authority. The assistant reminded his superior that time was limited, as they still needed to process a batch of adventurer membership applications upon their return. Dismissing the concern, the man, Hexian, scoffed at the applications, remarking that those who applied were simply rejects from other guilds, desperate for another chance. Without hesitation, he ordered his assistant to decline all applications, declaring that they did not accept trash. Turning his attention back to the shop, the agent approached Hexian, informing him of newly arrived equipment and offering a brief introduction. With limited time, Hexian agreed, and they moved toward the section displaying the latest gear. The agent explained that this collection was designed for extreme conditions, pointing out an armor set reinforced for poison and cold resistance. Meanwhile, Chung remained engrossed in his own observations, meticulously noting the enhancements. However, Hushian's gaze suddenly locked onto Chung. With narrowed eyes, he asked if Chung was a reporter. The agent quickly clarified that Chung was simply a regular customer who frequently visited the store. At this, Hexian stepped closer, inspecting him with an air of disdain. "You're just a level 3 adventurer," Hexian remarked, his tone laced with condescension. Caught off guard, Chung looked up in confusion. Before he could respond, Hexian activated his skill perception. A screen materialized before him, displaying Cheng's stats, level 3, with 67 portal entries but 0 successful clearances. Hexian scoffed. "And what exactly are you writing down?" He snatched a glance at Cheng's notes and frowned. Realizing Chung was comparing the strengths and weaknesses of different gear, Hushian's irritation flared. With a smirk, he ridiculed Chung, mocking his inability to complete even the lowest-level dungeon strategy. "People like you just pretend to belong in places like this," he sneered. He continued, his voice dripping with scorn. "We work hard, we pay taxes to the association, and what does the association do? Waste resources on useless freeloaders like you." Under the weight of Hushian's words, Chung felt pressured, unsure of what to say. Instead, he simply apologized and moved to leave. But as he attempted to walk past, Hexian grabbed his shoulder, halting him in place. "Leaving already?" Hushian's grip tightened. "Didn't anyone teach you that it's rude to walk away when someone is talking to you?" Chung hesitated, unwilling to escalate the situation. It was best to avoid unnecessary trouble. Yet, before he could react, Hushian's hand sparked with electric energy. "How did you even reach level 3 without clearing a single dungeon?" he demanded. Chung remained silent, staring at him. With a sharp movement, Chung shrugged off Hushian's grip. "Don't touch me," he said firmly. The force of his resistance sent Hushian's hand recoiling slightly. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Hushian's expression darkened, his glare sharp enough to cut through steel. The air between them grew tense. Chung coughed violently, his body reacting to the residual magic that had touched him. An allergic reaction. Hexian clenched his fist, activating his armament. Powerful currents of electricity coursed through his hand. Without warning, he struck, landing a devastating punch to Cheng's stomach. The force sent Chung crashing to the floor. "You think you deserve dignity?" Hexian scoffed, towering over him. "You should start by proving yourself first." Still on the ground, Chung groaned in pain as Hexian continued, his suspicions taking shape. "You've entered the portal 67 times without clearing a single one. Are you a spy?" He smirked. Perhaps I should report you to the association. There might even be a reward. The shop agent rushed to Cheng's side, helping him up. Are you okay? She asked, concern in her voice. Blood trickled from Cheng's nose, but he quickly wiped it away. I'm fine, he muttered, forcing himself to stand. Hexian issued a final warning, his voice cold and threatening. I don't care who you are, but if I see you again, I will kill you. His gaze shifted to the agent. Stop wasting time on him. Now, show me the new products. The agent hesitated, glancing back at Chung. But he nodded reassuringly. I'm fine, he repeated, offering a faint smile of gratitude. With that, Chung turned and left the store, walking as if nothing had happened. He glanced back at the store, finally feeling more at ease. Knowing that Hexian appeared to be from a major guild, he decided it was best not to provoke him. Chung, a level 3 adventurer without a profession, was someone who would likely never achieve true success in the field. After all, an adventurer without a profession had no future, no matter how one looked at it. One day, mysterious portals began appearing worldwide, drawing the attention of experts from various nations who scrambled to analyze the energy they emitted. Initially, only a handful of monsters emerged, but their numbers soon multiplied, plunging the world into chaos. Governments formed joint military forces, yet modern weaponry proved ineffective against the creatures. Before resorting to nuclear measures, humanity discovered individuals who, during battle, awakened extraordinary abilities. This revelation led to the emergence of the adventurer profession. Ordinary people could become adventurers by slaying a monster, akin to drawing a powerful reward in a game. When Chung defeated his first monster, he was elated as a system notification displayed his reward. However, as he read it, confusion and disappointment set in. It was something far rarer than even the highest-tier prize. Years passed, and the adventurer industry flourished, becoming the most lucrative and influential profession. Those with talent could rise to fame, while the average ones barely survived, teetering on the brink of life and death. The Adventurers Guild established a competitive system that further emphasized the importance of talent. Those blessed with skill, power, and wealth controlled the majority of resources, while those from ordinary backgrounds were often left to fend for themselves. On the same day, in an abandoned district, 3 adventurers gathered: a level 20 fire mage, a level 20 tanker, and a level 21 warrior. Meanwhile, Chung, a level 3 adventurer with no class, searched for his team. Noticing that today's raid team was composed of level 20 adventurers, he wondered if they were entering a high-level portal. One of his teammates called him over, and as Chung approached, he was surprised to recognize them. He called out to his uncle Jonghyuk, Changho, and Yuncheol. His uncle explained that today's raid was only an E-level dungeon, but the presence of so many high-level adventurers was unusual. Chung speculated that the dungeon might hold something special and jotted down notes in his precious notebook. At that moment, Xiaoqian, a level 6 healer, excitedly greeted everyone. She pointed out that even if something valuable was inside, they wouldn't benefit from it. Chung explained that his notes weren't just about loot, but also recorded the dungeon's minerals, ecosystem, and other details. Xiaoqian countered that their chances of raiding dungeons were slim, making his research pointless. Still, Chung believed that understanding the dungeons was key to survival, and he remained determined to one day become a true adventurer. Before they could continue, their attention shifted as someone emerged from the portal. It was Hexian, exuding confidence as he smirked, aware of all eyes on him. Someone in the crowd announced his arrival, and he concealed his equipment, signaling the start of the operation. Chung was taken aback to see Hexian there. The guild leader praised one of his subordinates for their previous work, promising them a reward from the warehouse. However, when Hexian's gaze landed on Chung, his demeanor changed. Realizing he had been noticed, Chung instinctively turned away, grabbing Xiaoqian's hand and suggesting they leave. However, before they could escape, Hexian restrained him, demanding to know why he was being ignored. Anxiety surged through Chung, but he steeled himself, pushing Hexian's hand away and asserting that where he went was none of his concern. Hexian, enraged, seized Chung by the head and delivered a powerful kick to his abdomen. The force sent Chung crashing to the ground, triggering his severe reaction to magic. As he struggled with coughing and nosebleeds, Hexian loomed over him, conjuring a massive fireball and reminding him of the lowly position he had assigned to him. He threatened that if Chung angered him again, he could kill him without consequence. Noticing Cheng's worsening condition, Hexian asked if he was sick. Before things could escalate further, a security officer from the association intervened, ordering Hexian to release Chung or face disciplinary action. Knowing the association's leader wouldn't tolerate such behavior, Hexian begrudgingly dispersed the fireball, redirecting it elsewhere. The explosion sent debris flying, causing panic among the crowd. The officer warned Hexian against such reckless behavior, but he merely shrugged it off with a smirk, claiming his hand had slipped. Turning back to Chung, he mocked him, calling him a natural-born failure unfit to be an adventurer. Struggling to stand, Chung gritted his teeth, his face marked with fresh wounds. Hexian continued his taunts, asking if he needed help, but Chung ignored him and walked away. Xiaoqian rushed to Cheng's side, asking if he was all right. Meanwhile, Hexian casually invited the officer for a drink, to which she agreed. Watching the scene, the fire mage and tanker from earlier smirked, murmuring that sometimes they had to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. Their intent to target Chung was clear. As they prepared to enter the dungeon, the tanker announced that everyone should line up. The portal's magic reading confirmed it was an E-level dungeon, meant for adventurers between levels 3 and 5. Since the monsters had already been cleared, there was little risk involved. Xiaoqian remained concerned for Chung and asked if he was all right. He reassured her that he was fine. The portal led to another world, continuously radiating magic. Specialized tools measured the leaked energy to determine its level. Chung, who had only experienced E and D-level dungeons, understood the ranking system well. Dungeons were classified from E to A, with E-level being the lowest and safest. Unlike the elite adventurers seeking treasure and glory, Chung and his group were only there to mine minerals. Most adventurers in their position were those who had been cast out of the industry, left with no other means of earning a living. As Chung approached the portal, he extended his hand toward it. The portal would only close once their task was complete, but dungeon rewards and boss loot were irrelevant to them. However, every time Chung made contact with magic, his body violently rejected it, causing unbearable pain. Despite the agony, he endured it. There was no other way to survive. Inside the Tower of Forgetfulness, Cheng's allergy was immediately triggered upon stepping through the portal, causing his nose to bleed. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his hands, now stained with blood. Without hesitation, Xiaoqian and his uncle rushed to his side, deeply concerned, asking if he was all right. As the mage and the defender witnessed what had happened to Chung, the mage mockingly referred to him as the abandoned adventurer. The defender joined in, ridiculing Chung for his weakness and laughing derisively at his condition. Moments later, Cheng's body returned to normal. He had grown accustomed to this recurring affliction and no longer felt embarrassed by it. Meanwhile, the tanker announced that it was time to proceed in the area. Xiaoqian, concerned about Chung, searched frantically for him. To her surprise, she spotted him in a distant corner, deeply engrossed in sifting through stones he had unearthed. At the same time, Cheng's uncles observed him with a mix of pity and concern. One uncle, still weak after vomiting blood, toiled relentlessly, while the other questioned whether Chung had even heard their previous conversation. They once again called him the abandoned adventurer, prompting the other uncle to ask what the term truly meant. The explanation followed. An abandoned adventurer is someone whose body rejects magic during the awakening ceremony, a rare condition akin to a hidden profession. Those afflicted suffer allergic reactions at best, and at worst, their organs deteriorate due to magic exposure. Many perish mid-battle as their bodies succumb to the damage, and even healing magic can be fatal. Unable to wield skills or fight effectively, these individuals are deemed failures. The condition, also known as magic disease, was precisely what Chung suffered from. His status screen continuously reminded him that his body could not endure the strain of adventurer magic, barring him from obtaining a profession. However, a man advised against underestimating Chung. Despite his mere level 3 status, he had ventured into numerous portals, gaining experience bit by bit. Had he not been born with this affliction, he could have become a formidable warrior. Chung, fully aware of his limitations, tirelessly gathered crystals. Since he couldn't fight, his only means of leveling up was through exploration. He also knew that while magic disease could be treated overseas, the cost was exorbitant. Thus, he sought to save enough money through his efforts. Reaching into his pocket, Chung retrieved a recruitment advertisement from the Adventurers Guild, seeking strategy advisors to plan routes and dungeon tactics. This opportunity fueled his determination. He would earn enough to cure himself, buy equipment, and join the guild. With a resolute gaze, he vowed to reclaim his place as an adventurer. Soon after, a cart filled with crystals arrived, and someone inquired whether it was the final load. Chung busied himself placing his collection onto the cart. Another individual reminded the group that they needed to leave soon. If they lingered any longer, high-level adventurers would arrive, making the dungeon even more dangerous. Everyone agreed, knowing they stood no chance against level 20 monsters. Just as Chung turned his attention elsewhere, a strange sensation washed over him. His eyes landed on the Tower of Forgetfulness, from which he sensed an ominous magic. He speculated that the final boss room lay within and realized the portal's closure was imminent. Furthermore, he suspected the dungeon held not one but two bosses, as two towers stood in the area. Without warning, a blade slashed across his back, causing him to drop his collected crystals. The impact sent him crashing to the ground. Panic spread among the adventurers, and Xiaoqian rushed to his side, demanding to know what he was doing. The mage dismissively told her not to blame them, stating that their orders were to take care of Chung. Meanwhile, the assailant warned the others to step back if they valued their lives. Cheng's condition worsened as his allergy flared up. His thoughts drifted to Hexian, who had repeatedly targeted him. Clutching his injured side, he heard the mage explain that Hexian had deemed him pitiful and had ordered them to dispose of him. Despite his agony, Chung forced himself to stand. Xiaoqian pleaded for him to stop, but he ignored her. To him, living as a powerless adventurer was a crime in itself, and he cursed his oppressors under his breath. The mage sneered, channeling his magic. He mocked Chung for aspiring to be an adventurer despite his frail body, then threatened to end his life with his strongest spell. Chung, however, merely smirked. He finally understood Hexian's intentions. He was meant to help in a twisted way. Fixating on their villainous aura, Chung questioned their motives. They were nothing more than outlaws who took pleasure in others' suffering. He had done nothing to warrant their hostility, and he wondered if they truly believed they had the right to play gods, determining who lived and who died. Meanwhile, in the real world, a conversation took place. A voice mentioned a new policy requiring additional funding for low-level adventurers to curb excessive competition. The speaker thanked Hexian for his assistance in managing and training them. Hexian laughed mockingly, dismissing low-level adventurers as disposable. He stated that no one would care if a few of them disappeared. The caller warned him to be cautious, ensuring no evidence remained, as any investigation from the inspection department could jeopardize everything. Hexian reassured them, smirking as he declared that no one who wasn't meant to survive would leave that dungeon alive. The world belonged to the strong. No one mourned the weak. Back in the dungeon, a massive fireball materialized in the air. The mage hurled it at Chung, who barely dodged, though the explosion sent debris flying, some of which struck his face, drawing blood. He recognized the attack as a level 3 fireball skill from a magic-type profession. Realizing that the mage was toying with him rather than finishing him off immediately, Chung attempted to flee, knowing another attack was imminent. The second fireball struck him directly, resulting in a powerful explosion. The mage smirked, believing he had finally defeated Chung. The force of the blast sent Chung hurtling through the air as the mage watched on mercilessly. Tears welled in Cheng's eyes. He wasn't ready to die. Summoning his weapon, he launched an attack in desperation. Anticipating Cheng's move, the mage conjured another spell. However, to his shock, Cheng's strike landed, suppressing him momentarily. Cheng's heartbeat grew erratic as his condition worsened, and he coughed up a great deal of blood. Barely able to remain standing, he collapsed beside the mage. Unexpectedly, the tanker stepped on Cheng's head, laughing maniacally. Without hesitation, he plunged his sword into Cheng's body, causing blood to splatter. Mocking him, he thanked Chung for the entertainment. Pain consumed Chung as he vomited more blood. He questioned why he had to die simply for being powerless. As the other adventurers recoiled in horror, they realized they too would be killed. The tanker explained that they couldn't be allowed to leave and spread word of what had transpired. Just then, the Tower of Forgetfulness released a surge of dark energy, triggering a system alert. Dungeon anomaly detected. Dungeon boss replaced with high-level entity. A white aura enveloped the tower as an imposing figure descended upon the battlefield. A muscular, white-haired man landed beside the mage, effortlessly crushing his head into the ground. As Cheng's consciousness faded, he barely registered the presence of two figures. The Grim Reapers had arrived. One of them smirked, holding the severed head of the mage. The black and white impermanents had come. In a parallel universe, Chung found himself standing in a cold, dark place. Scanning his surroundings, he tried to make sense of where he was and why everything was shrouded in darkness. As he explored, a mechanical voice echoed through the void, announcing the detection of a player's presence. Chung instinctively searched for the source of the voice, but before he could react, a cursed shrine materialized before him, commanding him to proceed. Gazing at the eerie shrine, which was stained with blood, Chung hesitated, uncertain of what it was. The voice seemed to originate from within the shrine itself. Driven by curiosity, he cautiously reached inside, suspecting something hidden within. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his hand. Something had bitten him. Out of nowhere, a cursed brush appeared, grumbling about Cheng's intrusion and calling him a nuisance. Without delay, the brush welcomed him and inquired whether he had activated the system. Confused, Chung questioned what the brush meant by system and demanded to know where he truly was, as the place felt utterly empty. The cursed brush, bewildered by his words, asked what he was talking about. Before Chung could respond, the brush pointed behind him, revealing the massive gates of hell. Looking at the reflection in the water beneath him, Chung slowly turned around, and to his astonishment, the colossal gate loomed behind him. The brush then nonchalantly informed him that he was already dead. Hearing those words, Chung froze in fear, his eyes widening in disbelief. Memories of his last moments flooded his mind. He had been slain in a dungeon, betrayed by a tanker who plunged a sword into him. The realization left him devastated. He had only wanted to cure his illness and live as a normal adventurer, yet he had met such an end. The cursed brush, unimpressed by his sorrow, mockingly asked if he needed comfort, remarking that his life had been miserable from the start. It dismissed his despair, stating that there was no use dwelling on it now since they had more pressing matters. Before Chung could argue, the ground trembled as the massive gates slowly creaked open. As they stepped through, Chung asked what would become of him now that he was dead. The brush simply told him to follow and find out. While Chung remained visibly distraught, the cursed brush was amused by how quickly he had accepted his fate. Upon reaching their destination, Chung noticed the overwhelming darkness and questioned where they were. The brush reassured him that he would understand soon. Then, one by one, torches lining the vast chamber ignited, illuminating an enormous hall. Chung was awestruck by its grandeur, likening it to the palace of the giant king he had only seen in online images. However, the brush cut his amazement short, urging him to stay focused. As Chung explored, his attention was drawn to a massive corpse lying in the room. The brush told him to show respect. It was the body of Lord Yama. The name sounded familiar, and Chung quickly recalled tales of the god who recorded the lifespan of mortals. The brush explained that when people die, their souls are brought to the underworld to be judged. The wicked suffer eternal torment, while the righteous move on. The sole authority over these judgments was Lord Yama, the ruler of the Een world, who commanded legions of spectral warriors. Chung, now fully attentive, recalled mythological accounts of Yama wielding a pen that determined the fates of the living. However, Chung was shocked and skeptical. If Lord Yama was truly so powerful, how could he have perished? He accused the brush of fabricating stories, but the brush scoffed at the idea of lying about such a thing. To prove its point, it directed Cheng's gaze toward a wall filled with ancient inscriptions. Stepping closer, Chung studied the text but found it difficult to decipher. Frustrated, he demanded an explanation, but as he focused, an inexplicable understanding of the symbols came over him. He realized that these carvings were records of a great battle. Among the inscriptions, a painting stood out. Though damaged, it depicted Lord Yama and his spectral army locked in combat against an unknown foe. Additional fragmented messages hinted at the outcome. By piecing them together, Chung discerned the truth. Lord Yama had been defeated, his head severed, and his body entombed here. A trial had been established to guard his remains. Realizing the implications, Chung was stunned. A war had occurred between divine rulers, but could this truly be real? Before he could process everything, a system notification appeared before him. Solo mission. Among the fallen heroes, locate the true head of Lord Yama. Time limit, none. Reward. Mangpa soup, a potion capable of healing all ailments and wounds. Reading the notification, Chung speculated whether the pen referred to in myths was involved. Before he could dwell on it, the brush interrupted, explaining that this was the trial he had mentioned. Completing it would grant Chung a second chance at life. The brush then revealed a shocking truth. Chung was not completely dead, but in a half-dead state. This revelation startled Chung, who had fully believed he was beyond saving. In his frustration, he smacked his forehead, only to be thrown backward by an unseen force. Rereading the mission details, he contemplated his situation. He wasn't sure if this place qualified as a dungeon, but his priority was clear. He had to find a way back to life. If completing this trial could resurrect him, then he had no choice but to see it through. The promise of Manhwa soup intrigued him. If it could cure his long-standing illness, then the risk was worth it. Without hesitation, he pressed the confirmation button, accepting the trial. Suddenly, severed heads began falling from above. At first, Chung barely registered what was happening, but as he looked up, he saw countless heads tumbling down, each belonging to a different entity. Panic set in. Desperately, he turned to the cursed brush for an explanation. The brush merely smirked, stating that the trial had begun. Chung repeated the mission's objective. Out of all these heads, only one was the real Lord Yama. But with thousands piled like mountains, how was he supposed to find it? The cursed brush found amusement in his distress, remarking that if it were easy, it wouldn't be a trial. Gritting his teeth, Chung resolved to search manually, picking up and examining each head. Some were obviously not Yama's, but progress was slow. Frustrated, he muttered about the lack of clues, unlike dungeons, where at least puzzles had hints. Determined, Chung returned to the inscriptions. If any hint existed, it had to be hidden in the text. Ignoring the brush's attempts to distract him, he focused on the words. Then, as realization struck, a smirk formed on his lips. The cursed brush immediately panicked, demanding to know what he had discovered, offering to help in exchange for the information. But Chung ignored him, shifting through the pile of heads with renewed determination. Minutes later, he carefully picked up one specific head, his eyes filled with certainty. Holding it up, he explained his reasoning. The inscription stated that even in death, Lord Yama glared at his enemy, bearing a distinct scar from the final blow he had suffered. Turning to the brush for confirmation, he was met with a cryptic response. "You'll find out soon enough." As the brush retreated, Chung felt unease creeping in. Before he could react, the right eye of the head emitted an ominous glow. A sharp beam of light shot forth, and Chung realized, too late, that it was about to explode. A massive explosion erupted instantly due to the head's reaction, and unfortunately, Chung was caught in the blast. The force sent him crashing into a pile of heads, leaving him severely injured. Weakened from the impact, Chung lay on the ground and muttered about the explosion, while the cursed brush mockingly expressed sympathy, correcting him by saying he misunderstood the situation. Despite the pain coursing through his body, Chung forced himself to stand and questioned where he had gone wrong. The inscription had only referenced Lord Yama's face, which led him to suspect that Lord Yama might not possess a human visage. Determined, Chung pushed through the pain and resumed his search for Lord Yama's head, convinced there had to be another valid option. Upon noticing Cheng's perseverance, the cursed brush acknowledged his effort and, as a reward, decided to reveal a secret. Chung halted as the cursed brush disclosed that the trial had a time limit. Specifically, the duration it took for the black and white impermanents from the surface dungeon to eliminate all intruders. His accidental death had triggered the system, initiating its programmed response. The black and white impermanents functioned as a failsafe, intended to eradicate monsters that caused player deaths. However, Cheng's demise was at the hands of humans, some of whom were his allies. Following the system's logic, the black and white impermanents would now eliminate every living being in the dungeon unless Chung completed the trial and took control of the system. Frozen by this revelation, Chung asked the cursed brush to repeat itself. As sweat formed on his brow, his thoughts raced to Xiaoqian and the others. Were they safe, or were they already battling the black and white impermanents? Fueled by desperation, Chung frantically searched for the head, realizing that if the trial's time limit coincided with the intruder's extermination, then failure meant death for everyone. As he continued his frantic search, he spotted a head similar to the one he sought colliding with another. Believing he had found the correct one, he sprinted toward it, shouting in triumph. The moment he made contact, another powerful explosion erupted. This time, the sheer force knocked Chung unconscious. Moments later, he awakened, buried beneath the pile of heads. As he raised his hand, he quickly stood up, questioning how long he had been unconscious. The cursed brush hovered near him and revealed that he had been out for about 20 minutes. Shocked by the lost time, Chung struggled to process the setback. The cursed brush then informed him that he had triggered a trap. Chung speculated whether it was a punishment for the puzzle, to which the cursed brush coldly reminded him that time was slipping away. Hearing this, Cheng's expression turned serious as he momentarily froze. Then, out of nowhere, he let out a sinister laugh. Startled and confused, the cursed brush questioned Cheng's sudden behavior. However, Chung continued laughing, claiming he had figured out the answer. He then sarcastically questioned the existence of a potion that miraculously cured all ailments. Irritated by the dark joke, the cursed brush called him insane. Chung recalled strategy forums discussing dark dungeon rules designed to manipulate human emotions. These rules subjected players to torment, forcing them into betrayal, despair, and false hope. The trial's excessive number of heads was a deliberate trick. There was never a correct choice. Understanding this, Chung sat in a corner, ignoring the cursed brush's repeated questions about whether he had given up. The brush reminded him that surrender meant no resurrection, but Chung remained silent. Dark joke dungeons thrived on division, isolation, and emotional torment. It was as if a demonic entity lurked behind the portal, treating players as mere playthings in its twisted game. Realizing how foolishly he had believed this was his second chance at life, Chung laughed at himself. He then glanced at the cursed brush and noticed its anxious demeanor. Brushing off the thought, he assumed the brush was simply excited. However, the cursed brush suddenly warned Chung to be cautious. Puzzled, Chung acknowledged the warning with a smirk, but pondered its meaning. At that moment, he noticed an old man with a white beard floating. Simultaneously, the heads around the room drifted weightlessly, seemingly in zero gravity. They bounced and settled after impacts, but something about their motion seemed unnatural. This strange phenomenon prompted Chung to reconsider the situation. He likened it to stirring water with a stick, creating ripples that moved floating leaves. Testing his theory, he lightly flicked one of the heads with his finger. Suddenly, a realization struck him. Recalling the inscriptions and murals, he froze. Speculation alone wouldn't solve the puzzle. He needed action. Observing the ceiling, he calculated the approximate position from before and repositioned himself, preparing to test his theory once more. Chung then tossed a head toward the cursed brush, who was caught off guard when it struck him. Startled, the cursed brush demanded to know what Chung was doing, while Chung feigned innocence. Realizing the situation, the cursed brush broke into a cold sweat. If Chung continued experimenting, he might unravel the truth. Feigning composure, the cursed brush urged Chung to surrender, claiming it would be easier. Chung found this odd and asked why the brush was suddenly speaking kindly to him. Flustered, the cursed brush insisted it had always been considerate and suggested that Chung should simply wait for time to run out. However, Chung merely smiled. He had already figured it out. The carvings and murals held crucial clues. The system's initial message had stated this was a solo quest. At first, Chung believed the trial was merely an added safeguard for King Yama's remains. Though he couldn't read the inscriptions, he could feel the message they conveyed. The final text mentioned that the king had departed hand in hand. This trial was designed for the individual mentioned in the inscription. If King Yama had truly wanted to hide his head, he would have set a death trap instead of placing it within the room. The true solution had always been positioned above and behind the puzzle solver, shifting as the solver moved. Now knowing where to look, Chung resumed his search for clues. Observing him, the cursed brush noticed something unsettling in Cheng's actions. Chung approached King Yama's corpse and pondered how to retrieve the hidden head. Climbing up seemed too crude. There had to be another way. Recalling the phrase, "broaden your perspective," Chung analyzed the text further. The solution likely involved the old one mentioned in the writings. Frustrated, the cursed brush demanded to know why Chung was still moving, insisting the trial was no longer relevant to him. Chung suddenly stared at the brush, causing it to flinch. Realizing something crucial, Chung approached the corpse, leaving the cursed brush bewildered. Without hesitation, Chung performed a respectful ritual, believing it would return King Yama's head. At first, nothing happened. But then, he noticed a distinct red head resting atop the corpse. Remembering King Yama's status, Chung decided to show greater reverence. He performed a kowtow, a deep bow with his forehead touching the ground. As he completed the gesture, an intense light engulfed the area. King Yama's head returned to its rightful place, unleashing a powerful aura. While Chung didn't know who the trial was intended for, he recognized this as his chance at rebirth. A system notification congratulated him on completing the trial, stating that the Mengpa soup had taken effect. Chung respawned outside the Hell Gate, smiling in triumph. The magic flowing within him was now free from sickness. The system confirmed his success, granting him the agreed-upon item and the profession of Intern of the Underworld. Curious about the one's pact mentioned, Chung speculated whether it was a hidden profession. Suddenly, the cursed brush transformed into a monstrous being with razor-sharp teeth, seething with rage. Caught off guard, Chung initially thought it was a joke, until the brush lunged at him, mouth open wide. Panicking, Chung barely had time to react before the brush devoured him whole. Adventurers are the wealthiest individuals in the world, their fortune universally recognized as it is earned through genuine peril. Each battle a testament to their survival. In this era dominated by adventurers, it is a common sight to see crowds gathered outside portals. However, this time the atmosphere was tense. People anxiously searched for their loved ones. Parents frantically asking about their children, others desperately seeking their fathers. They were friends, parents, spouses, and children. Many families lost someone to the other side of the portal, and returning intact was considered the greatest blessing. Suddenly, a desperate scream broke through the crowd, a voice pleading for help. A hand swiftly pulled open the freezer door, revealing Chung gasping for air. He staggered forward, expressing gratitude to his rescuer. To his surprise, his savior turned out to be the cursed brush, which chuckled and mockingly accepted his thanks. Shocked, Chung instinctively struck the cursed brush, knocking it to the ground. The brush, unbothered, explained that Chung had narrowly escaped death. It recounted how a woman had found him before a group dressed in black took him to the morgue. Understanding the situation, Chung quickly pieced together why he had ended up there. The brush, irritated, demanded to know why he had been hit as soon as Chung woke up. Chung apologized, admitting he had momentarily feared the brush would consume him again. A sudden realization struck Chung. If no one had exited the dungeon for a prolonged period, the Adventurers Association's security officers would surely be alarmed. He grew somber, mourning the loss of those who had perished under the hands of the Reapers while he was caught in the trial. With hesitation, he turned to the cursed brush, asking if there were any survivors. The brush confirmed that aside from Chung, only 2 others had made it out alive, but suggested postponing the discussion until they were safely out of their current predicament. Chung nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, a morgue staff member, visibly exhausted, muttered to himself about the constant influx of injured adventurers. He grumbled about having to handle the bodies, pushing one into a room when Chung suddenly dashed toward him. Startled, the worker ordered Chung to stop, scolding him for running in a hospital. Their eyes met in silence before the man questioned if Chung knew where he was. The cursed brush urged Chung to keep moving, but the staff member's expression changed as recognition set in. He realized Chung was supposed to be dead. Overwhelmed, the man fainted on the spot. Chung caught him before he collapsed entirely, while the cursed brush berated him for stopping. With no time to waste, Chung carefully set the man aside and prepared to leave the hospital immediately. Elsewhere, a woman on a phone call assured the caller that she would handle the situation. She expressed concern over the unexpected accident at a level 5 portal, mentioning how strict the chief was. Unbeknownst to her, Chung and the cursed brush were scrambling for an escape route nearby. Chung scolded the cursed brush for leading them in the wrong direction. The woman, hearing the commotion, turned around abruptly. However, all she saw were passers-by on the street. Though she sensed something amiss, she moved on. Eventually, Chung managed to return home. Once inside his room, he locked the door and exhaled deeply, relieved to be back. The cursed brush, intrigued by his surroundings, questioned if he truly lived in such a place. Chung, irritated, retorted that it was his home. Was that not enough? The cursed brush compared Cheng's small room to the vast underworld, jesting that at least there, space was plentiful. Chung, unimpressed, shot back that housing must be cheap in the underworld, to which the brush smugly replied that it was free for the dead. Lying on his bed, Chung finally felt a moment of respite after a grueling day. The cursed brush, however, disrupted his peace, asking about his family. Chung calmly explained that he had none and had lived alone for a long time. Accepting his answer, the cursed brush inquired about his origins, jokingly suggesting that he might have emerged from a rock. The remark stung, causing Chung to reflect on his past. He revealed that both his parents had been adventurers who disappeared when he was young after entering a portal and never returned. Like many others, he had spent years waiting at the portal, hoping in vain for their return. Many viewed Chung with pity, believing he needed support, while others mocked him, offering demeaning jobs. Yet Chung remained unsatisfied. Something felt off. Despite decades of recorded adventurer history, there were still mysteries surrounding rare professions. Necromancers, messengers of gods, and chariots, once considered legendary, had faded into obscurity. As he searched for answers on his phone, he questioned whether his abilities could be a hidden profession. Doubt crept in. No such profession had ever been recorded before, but he remembered possessing a rare skill. Still, was it truly the right decision to continue as an adventurer? Although he had returned from death, he knew all too well the struggles of starting over from level 1. The competition among adventurers was ruthless, and he had already suffered betrayal once. Clenching his fists in frustration, Chung feared history would repeat itself. He recalled Huxian's cruelty, how low-level adventurers were exploited, their lives treated as disposable. Cheng's grip tightened on the sheets, his anger simmering. Would he be able to survive? With a weary sigh, he admitted that everything was a mess. Yet, if he abandoned adventuring, he had no idea how to move forward in life. Meanwhile, the cursed brush had fixated on a broom in the corner, seemingly lost in thought. Chung continued, recalling how his parents' disappearance had made him an outcast, how school rumors and bullying had alienated him. But he quickly shook off the memories and refocused. Determined, Chung commanded the system to display his skills, swiping his hand through the air. Nothing appeared. Perplexed, Chung grew frantic. Others had done this exact motion before. The cursed brush scoffed, reminding him that he was still level 1. Chung, frustrated, argued that everyone had skills and questioned how a level 1 adventurer could even level up in dungeons without them. The cursed brush reassured him, explaining that to celebrate his rebirth, the system had granted him a gift. Cheng's eyes widened as the system notification appeared. The system issued a mission, a gun in hand. The objective was to go to the Adventurers Association, with the reward unknown. Chung asked if this was like the previous mission board, to which the cursed brush suggested they check it out firsthand. Upon arrival at the Adventurers Association, Chung pondered the reason behind his mission directing him there. He reminded the brush to stay hidden, fearing recognition. The brush reassured him that no one else could see it, urging him to keep his voice down. They reached a section where a man was slaying a monster. Chung explained that this was the Awakening area, where adventurers earned their first kill and officially began their journey. The cursed brush, however, was more concerned with the unpleasant stench of the room. Pausing, the brush asked if this massive building was solely for awakening. Chung clarified that it handled all adventure-related affairs. Suddenly, the brush sensed a powerful magic presence above them. It identified the energy of multiple portals, and Chung confirmed its intuition. Every branch of the association housed public portals for new adventurers to level up. Once a dungeon was cleared, reports were issued detailing loot, casualties, and monster wounds. Performing well could even attract guilds for training opportunities. The brush, amused by Cheng's knowledge, mocked his level 1 status. Chung, unfazed, jokingly threatened to throw the brush away. Before he could react, a heavily armored adventurer collided with Chung, nearly knocking him over. The man scowled and wiped his gear clean, scolding Chung for standing in the way. Chung quickly apologized, but the adventurer glared at him, using a skill to inspect his status with disdain. Observing from a distance, the brush noticed the armored man bowing to someone in a tuxedo. Chung explained that this man could boost an adventurer's record. The cursed brush smirked, realizing the power dynamics at play. Suddenly, the system sent another notification. Chung read it, his eyes widening in surprise. The next mission required him to choose a dungeon. With a sigh of relief, Chung reassured himself. There was no need to rush. He would take it step by step. However, as he approached the dungeon, hesitation gripped him. The cursed brush urged him forward, but Chung hesitated. Why was he the only one entering? Had he truly understood what step-by-step meant? Chung grew frustrated and demanded a proper explanation. In response, the system activated, informing him that his mission was to clear the dungeon solo. The cursed brush interjected, urging him to calm down, as it had no control over the mission's contents. Upon hearing this, Cheng's anger intensified. He questioned whether the brush understood that dungeons typically required a team of at least 4 members, just like the last time. Earlier, Chung had inquired about the process, and the staff had confirmed that he was applying for a level 3 dungeon. They instructed him to select a dungeon first, after which he would be assigned to a team. Once chosen, he could proceed to the preparation room, where he could gather as many supplies as needed without restrictions. He was also provided with dungeon information to aid his preparations. Chung reviewed the options carefully, considering the difficulty and monster types. The available dungeons included the extinct volcano's foothill settlement, the Banshee's Lament, the Wind Orb Parade, the Water-Spirited Ruins, and the Cursed Brush's Wonders. Seeing Chung hesitate, the Cursed Brush grew impatient and decided to make the choice for him, clicking the screen abruptly. Chung, now enraged, demanded to know what the brush had done. The brush smugly responded that he should be grateful, but Chung refused, stating he had been deliberating carefully. The staff confirmed that the Water-Spirited Ruins had been recorded as his selection and advised him to proceed to the prep room. Back in reality, the Cursed Brush relented, agreeing to grant Chung an additional life-saving skill. It then prompted him to check the mission details. Chung complied, and the system displayed his mission: the brush's 100,000 jokes, with the first task being to slap the brush. The reward, however, remained unknown. Outraged, Chung tightened his grip on the brush, demanding an explanation. The brush protested, claiming it wasn't responsible, as mission contents were system-generated. If Chung abandoned the mission, he would forfeit both the Manhwa Recap and the life granted by the system. Realizing the consequences, Chung released his grip. His only option was to complete the first task and claim his reward. Determined, he accepted the mission and activated his skill, Hellfire Embers, a remnant flame from the Hellfire Sea that continuously burned while consuming MP. He then activated Papermen, which allowed him to summon 3 paper figures imbued with his soul, creating convincing decoys. Chung was thrilled. Securing even 1 life-saving skill was rare, yet he had obtained 3 at once. Examining the paper figures, he marveled at their utility. Now equipped with Hellfire Embers and Papermen, along with MP recovery potions, bandages, smoke bombs, and other essentials, he understood that his supplies were limited. However, carrying excessive weight would only hinder him. Upon entering the Water-Spirited Ruins, Chung devised his strategy: follow the map, avoid unnecessary battles, and minimize resource consumption to complete the mission efficiently. The dungeon description detailed a once thriving settlement of water sprites that had been abandoned, leaving behind aquatic predators and numerous traps. The mission required him to collect beacons placed within the labyrinth to ensure a safe exit. This puzzled Chung. Shouldn't the final goal be to defeat the dungeon boss? He then recalled that many of the association's portals were reusable. A conquered portal vanished, making it a consumable resource. However, adventurers discovered that as long as the boss's room remained sealed, the portal would stay active, with new monsters appearing over time. This loophole transformed certain dungeons into training grounds, which the Cursed Brush disapproved of, calling it cheating. Focusing on his mission, Chung made a final equipment check. Tightening his water walking boots, he submerged them to test their magical properties. Previously, due to his magic disease, he had been unable to use them, but now, fully cured, he could wear them freely. Realizing the Manhwa Recap was working, Cheng's excitement grew. Unable to contain his joy, he sprinted across the water, elated by his restored abilities. The Cursed Brush, unimpressed, reminded him that it had told him so before. After celebrating briefly, Chung refocused. He reviewed the map, noting the vast water-filled area with ruins for cover. Moving forward cautiously, he admired the hand-drawn quality of the map, assuming it was crafted by an association staff member. As they walked, Chung warned the Cursed Brush to avoid a nearby starfish, explaining that they were aggressive creatures that would leap to attack. Meanwhile, the Cursed Brush noticed a frog with a halo and inquired about it. Chung identified it as a soul-form frog, a creature enchanted with soul magic to function as a sentry. Relieved that he had yet to encounter any threats, Chung began to hope he could clear the dungeon unscathed. However, the system suddenly issued a new notification. He must defeat at least 1 monster. Frustrated, Chung lashed out at the Cursed Brush, accusing it of conspiring with the system. The brush denied any involvement, but Chung had no choice but to comply. He scanned his surroundings, recalling the dungeon's primary inhabitants. Just then, a duckman appeared in the distance. Chung recalled from records that duckmen typically moved in packs, but fortunately, this one was alone. However, upon spotting Chung, the duckman panicked and attempted to flee. Without hesitation, Chung pursued it. He noticed a whistle around the creature's neck, likely a tool to summon reinforcements. Aiming to destroy it first, he prepared to attack but hesitated, as his target was small and difficult to hit. The cursed brush advised him to coat his weapon with hellfire embers for better precision. Understanding the suggestion, Chung summoned his weapon and infused it with the flames, creating his new skill, flame coating. With enhanced speed, Chung struck the duckman, dealing immense damage and knocking it off balance. Approaching with his sword, he admired his skill's potency, as the flames persisted even underwater. The cursed brush commended his weapon choice, noting that a different weapon might have let the duckman escape. As Chung closed in, the duckman, seemingly pleading for mercy, began to cry. The cursed brush suggested sparing it, reminding Chung of his own past struggles. However, the duckman secretly grasped its spear, preparing to strike. Noticing the deception, Chung reacted swiftly, slashing its neck with his sword. Blood sprayed into the air. He reaffirmed what he had learned. In the dungeon, begging for mercy was meaningless. Checking his status, Chung saw that his MP had dropped to 57 out of 100 after just one attack. He realized he needed to manage his resources more efficiently. He quickly drank an MP potion, knowing opportunities to recharge might be scarce. The cursed brush questioned his weapon choice, mocking his rapier as a toothpick. Chung explained that, since he lacked a weapon he was truly skilled with, he opted for one that was long and lightweight. As he glanced at the system screen, he noticed his mission hadn't updated. The kill counter remained at 0. Suddenly, he heard a familiar whistle sound. The duckman, still alive, had used its whistle before succumbing. Immediately, a swarm of duckmen emerged from the water, all heading toward Cheng's location. The cursed brush scolded him for not finishing the job cleanly. Before Chung could react, the duckmen leaped into the air, surrounding him. Fear gripped him. There was no escape. Just then, a ray of light caught his attention. Seizing the opportunity, Chung activated a smoke bomb, creating a thick fog to mask his retreat. While the duckmen coughed and flailed, Chung slipped into the water. As he swam away, he sensed something moving underwater. Was it a monster? His tension eased when he realized it was the cursed brush, complaining that he had abandoned it. Just then, Chung surfaced, creating a splash that alerted the duckmen. They spotted him instantly. Exhausted and gasping for air, Chung prepared for the inevitable battle ahead.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to contribute further, you can now buy me a coffee. Every little bit helps in creating more quality content for you. Just click the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video.